Dan Illman, Ashley Mailloux taking a look at race number 9 at Woodbine on Sunday. It's the Grade 1 Canadian International. We're going a mile and a quarter. It's worth $750,000. And let's take a look at this field. Nation's Pride for who else? Charlie Appleby and Godolphin is even money. Nation's Pride looked very, very good getting back on the beam last time out in Germany. Going to face a pretty stiff challenge, perhaps from another European raider. That's the 8 Royal Champion, a horse that hasn't faced the quality of competition that Nation's Pride has, but seems to be coming into this race in good form.
The Roger Varian training has been very good, especially in those last two, one at Ascot and more recently at Yorku. I think this horse has a live shot in here. I do agree, though. I think all eyes are going to be on Nation's Pride, as they've basically been every time he's made a start in North America, and he's really hard to knock so far in 2023 off of those 3 big efforts.
Let's see how the pace plays out for the Canadian International. The 5 English Conqueror does have a good amount of speed. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Javier Castellano tries to make the lead with him starting over is also quick. It is worth noting that Nation's Pride took them all the way last time out in Germany, so he can adapt to any sort of scenario.
Definitely adaptable, and I agree. I do think the English Conqueror is going to be forwardly placed. If you look at his races, it's basically the best chance that he has of being effective in a spot like this against this level. The race at Saratoga, even his last start at Woodbine, I know it was on a different surface. He's been quite forward.
British royalty was claimed for $40,000 in 2021, then won the 3rd Jewel of Canada's Triple Crown. So we know he likes to go long on the turf. He just doesn't win very often. I thought he ran pretty well in the Belmont Gold Cup 4 starts back, but I have to be honest, I've been disappointed with his 3 subsequent efforts.
I have too, and I think he relishes longer distances. And with the international now being at a mile and a quarter in more recent times, I don't think this suits him. You mentioned the race at Belmont. He's going 2 miles. Even his race after that was probably the best of those most recent 3. It was going a mile and 5A. So I just don't think he's a horse that's really going to love the distance of the international.
Michael Maker has claimed Dynadrive on several occasions. He must really like this horse. And he took him for 62.5, 2 starts back, stretched him out. That's the typical Maker move. And the horse ran really well, won 2nd in the Colonial Cup. Just facing a tougher group, it seems, here.
We spoke yesterday about this. This is the Mike Maker move. He claims these horses, he's able to stretch them out. And I love that you pointed out this isn't like the first time this horse has been in the barn. There's something about him that he likes, and I loved seeing him first off the claim with a big effort. No, it wasn't a winning effort, but that race at Colonial, I thought overall was a really strong effort, considering where he's also 18-1 in that spot. He took no love, and I think with the way the connections go, he could take a step up here, but it's going to need to be a drastic step knowing about the invaders coming over from Europe.
The local hope in extremely sharp form is the number 3 Palazzi. He's won 3 in a row, including the Grade 3 Singspiel last time out. And this was a guy that had a little bit of back class. He was gelded over the winter and came back at Gulfstream in a $50,000 claimer. And Mark Casse escaped with the horse. Palazzi's again won 3 in a row, and he looks good finishing this race off, albeit with a pretty good trip.
It was a very good trip, and I think he got a nice ride overall all the way around. But my thing with him is he's got that win streak going. I don't know what he really faced 2 and 3 starts back. I know there were a lot of next out winners in that race, but again, it's, you're looking at the invaders and who he has to compete against. But 2 of those races have been over the turf course. I thought he actually really liked the added ground last time out. And Mark Casse, he's obviously a king up there and does very well.
Nation's Pride's past performances just speak for themselves. A multiple graded stakes winner down in the States in 2022, the beaten favorite in the Breeders' Cup Turf, and he's done little wrong in his 3 starts in 2023, and he just took them all the way last time out in Germany, was streaking under the wire.
We mentioned he's got the class, he's got the versatility. He showed that last time out. And, you look at the Breeders' Cup Turf, that was arguably his most disappointing finish in the last year and a half or so. And I think it came down to trip. He still fired a big number, but I think it came down to the trip. It didn't work out for him. And I do think he prefers to be a bit closer. And I think in this field with 7 other rivals, he's going to be able to get that once again.
The 5 English Conqueror was 4th in this race in 2021. He's coming into this start off of a solid effort, going a 2nd level allowance at Saratoga, but he does have his chance turning into the stretch here. Bear Oak is a pretty decent stayer, the horse that beats him, but that horse came back and kind of disappointed a little bit in Maryland the other day. I think if English Conqueror is a true contender in the International, he's got to win this one.
I think he can get a piece in the International at best. I agree. Probably would have wanted to see him win this, but I think that race overall, it was a decent field. Cross Border finished third in there, came back to win next out. And I think Cross Border's got some backlash to him if you go down the page and look at his races. And I do think he has a little bit of an edge having that early foot. But he does not like to win a lot. His last win was last year, later in the season, going a mile and a quarter. I do think, though, he's been consistent to say that at best. He's been a horse that can get a piece.
We talked about Dynadrive being claimed again by Maker, and they stretched him out in that stakes race, and he got beat. Well, who beat him but another Maker, the 6 Starting Over, and that was Starting Over's first race at a longer distance for Maker after going a mile and a 16th. He had a beautiful trip that day when he won, but he's tactical enough to work out those kind of trips.
If that came down to it, right, he was much closer than his stablemate was in that race and was able to draw clear in a length by there. Trevor McCarthy booked to ride again. I liked that progression. I think when you looked at the first race off the layoff, maybe at Churchill, he needed the race. Second time out, maybe needed more ground, and it finally came together in that most recent effort.
Speaking of layoffs, the number 7 Adamo might have needed a race last time out in the Arlington Million. It was a very ambitious spot for a first race off of a lengthy layoff. He actually went off favored and ran pretty well behind 2 legitimately good turf horses. Now, he won the United Nations, kind of a weaker grade 1 last year, and then was maybe thrown to the wolves in a couple of grade 1s. I think to assess Adamo's chances on Saturday, you have to ask yourself, did he have excuses for the Sword Dancer and the Joe Hirsch? And I think he might. I think he needs strictly firm ground, and he might not be a mile and a half horse against top turf horses.
So you bring up a good point about the ground, because I do know there is some rain in the forecast, which I think muddles a lot of the card, because there are several, when you look at the races on the turf course on Sunday in general, and just this weekend, there's a lot of horses that have no experience over ground that is not firm. So I think that's a valid point to bring up. Maybe he did have some issues with the surface. I do think, at the race 2 back, I don't think he was sharp out of the gate. And I think that same thing happened in the Arlington Million. And I know there's kind of debate about how strong the Arlington Million was, but I think it was a wide open race. I didn't have Set Piece on top winning that, but he was able to carve out a trip. And even, the runner-up is a respectable horse as well, who I'm not sure wanted to go the mile and a quarter compared to the previous year, which I think was at a mile and an eighth. So I thought his effort off the long layoff, all being said, was pretty solid. And Chad Brown's, we know he can have him cranked up second off the layoff.
And completing this field is Royal Champion, a European trained by Roger Varian, getting Lasix for the first time. This horse still needs to prove himself at the group level. He ran okay last time out at York, which has a left-handed turf course. And I like the fact that he's been able to do well over the left-handed courses in the past, but he loomed boldly with about a furlong to go, and he just couldn't stay with the top 2. I think he has some questions to answer as it pertains to whether he's as good as Nation's Pride.
Yeah, I think that is a big question. Do I think he can still be effective and get a piece in here? Sure. But I mean, everyone's trying to compare themselves to Nation's Pride. I will say, though, I thought in the race 2 back, he ran huge. It was a big field. And even last time out, maybe not, perfect. He didn't have what he needed in those final stages, but all in all, a good effort. And he's a type that he's been consistent throughout his career. And he's really, to me, 12 starts as a 5-year-old. He still has a lot of upside.
Let's take a look at our top selections for the Canadian International. Nation's Pride just looks like a standout on paper. I don't want to take a chance against him. We're both going 4-7-8.
I don't have the guts to take a shot against him, just looking at his resume and what he's accomplished here. I think, we do have this straight stone cold try. I would maybe change, though, depending how much rain is up at Woodbine. That's maybe where I would maybe lean against the 7 a little bit underneath and start shopping elsewhere. But it's still a great race, but Nation's Pride is the big name in here.
Nation's Pride hopes to keep it rolling along for Godolphin and Charlie Appleby at Woodbine. He'll be the favorite in the Canadian International.